All right, and we're in. How you doing? Welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
So, is this true? Is this your first podcast interview, like video podcast?
Very first. Very, very first. And I'm a little nervous. So we'll see how it goes.
That's amazing, though. Can you like because this has become such a thing. Like this has become such a medium now, right? Where
Yeah.
people are finally like hanging out with other people and just talking about life and business and careers and everything. It's wild.
Yeah. I prefer it too. Like I love listening to podcasts. It's very fun.
It is nice. Way back in the day, I used to do like a lot of television interviews and stuff.
Mhm.
And we go on like CNN and talk about one of our shows or one of our adventures or BBC. And we'd only get like a minute or like 90 seconds max. And everything would be just so quick and then you're off. But I mean, at least here we get to sit in and settle in and chat.
Yeah. You may learn more about me than you want to know.
That's the whole point.
And I think probably after the 1 minute interview, you probably walked away going, oh, I forgot to say this. I forgot to say that.
Well, it's just so when you do like a news spot or something like that, it's so stressful because like you only have like 60 or 90 seconds. They ask you like 3 or 4 questions and you don't have time to really prepare anything. So
Yeah.
it's brutal.
It's racing.
Yeah, and radio is worse.
Your mouth gets dry.
Absolutely, yeah. Very, very stressful. No one brings you coffee or hibiscus tea or anything?
Yeah. I'm excited to try it. Wait.
Absolutely. So, we're gonna get into vents. We're gonna get into everything that you're doing now, all the exciting stuff. But it's always great to kind of understand the origin story and how you got there. So maybe we can start at the beginning. So where are you from?
I was born in Indiana, but only lived there for about 3 years, so not many memories of it, but grew up mainly in Ohio. Very, very, very small town. It was so small we didn't even have a stoplight, but I absolutely loved growing up there.
So much better than LA, right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely no traffic jams in my little small farm town, but
Mm.
it was great. Great place to grow up. I still go back there every summer for 2 to 3 weeks and just take my kids there. And we just soak it in, just enjoy the country road drives and the peace and quiet and calmness.
It's
That's
still part of your soul. You can
it's
feel it.
totally, totally part of my soul.
Yeah.
If I don't get back, I just feel like yeah,
The Midwest is something quite special, isn't it?
it really is.
Mm.
It really is, and I want my kids to realize, I mean, I love LA, I love Orange County where I live, absolutely love it, but I want them also to see, what growing up, in different parts of the country and eventually the world, is like. It's so different.
It's interesting because, like, I'm new to the United States, so I don't know if you know my story, but I grew up in Canada, and then I lived in China for 18 years,
Mhm.
and then I was in Dubai, and then I've only been here since, like, November 2023.
Oh, wow.
So I'm getting used to LA, and it's a real struggle, I can tell you, like, it's not a very easy city to, like, live in and navigate, like, I think Orange County is much nicer, but then when you have to come all the way up to LA and you don't have, like, someone else to ride with and you can use the diamond lane, it's a bit of a
Exactly.
nightmare.
Exactly. I have a Tesla now, so I have that little car decal.
Oh, do you?
Even by myself, I can drive in the carpool lane, which
Is that a
is
thing?
amazing. It's amazing.
So if you have an electric vehicle, you can use the
You can
diamond
get
lane?
a you can use the diamond with your little sticker.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's life-changing.
Because most of my guests that come up from Orange County, they bring their like, one of their kids or
Yeah,
their husband or wife or
yeah.
whatever just to accompany them so they can use the diamond lane.
When I would be pregnant, I used to tell myself, "Well, technically, I'm carrying another person," so every now and then I'd sneak in.
That's wild. So, okay, so you grew up in Indiana, but you were kinda raised in Ohio, and, I mean, what did you do in Ohio? Like, what were you interested in school? Like, were you, like, entrepreneurial, like, right from the start?
I mean, growing up there wasn't a lot to do, so there was a lot of downtime. I mean, this was the time before cell phones, and so you really had a lot of time with your imagination, and I really kinda miss those days and wish my kids had more of that time because I feel like that's where ideas grow and that's where dreaming grows, and I remember always being a dreamer even as a kid. If it was finding a way to get, special scratch and sniff stickers that I couldn't afford, I would have a dream and I'd write the company telling them like, "Hey, can you please send me some?" And they would send them or just little things like that. I would make up characters. I don't know, I just dreamed big always since I was little. And, we would just normal childhood though in a small town, riding bikes, doing sports, school. My class was very, very small, only about 52 people. and you were with them from kindergarten to 12th grade.
Oh, wow.
Same group of kids, same friends, and so that part was really special,
Mhm.
and, it's just nice.
What sports did you play?
Mainly swimmer,
Okay.
that's what I did through college as well, but I also loved running. Those were kind of my 2 main sports, cross country track and then swimming. I was not good at the technical ball sports.
I played basketball.
Oh, I envy you. I wish I could have been good at that,
Yeah.
but
But the Midwest, I mean, you're just connected to wide open, epic landscapes and spaces,
yeah.
aren't you?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my mom's backyard was a cornfield. So every fall, we would just create mazes, our own mazes in the cornfield, and we would just run and play in them and play tag. And in the fall, we would all the leaves would fall over the yards, and we would rake paths in them, and we called it pathy tag. And we would just race and play, and you just basically were outside from morning till night.
Did anyone crazy mow down their cornfield and put in a baseball diamond?
No, Children of the Corn.
Or a Field of Dream? Or is it Field of Dream with
That's right.
Calvin Costner? Yeah.
That's right. I mean, it was one of those movies.
I'm old, so there not a lot of people get that reference, but that was a game changer for me in my trajectory of as a movie watching audience member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I remember the movie for sure.
Yeah. And then so like growing up in Ohio, what made you even think about going to one of the coasts, and why did you choose the West Coast?
Well, I think I always just dreamed of California, seeing it on TV and just being really excited about TV. I remember watching TV shows and wanting to be on game shows and just being really excited about Hollywood and actors, and that whole world always excited me. And then I went to college in Cincinnati, Ohio, University of Cincinnati. Shortly after that, I met who would then become my husband. Um, in Cincinnati, and he went back to Southern California where he was from, and then I joined him about a year later. So, it's funny how life just kinda works like that.
Yeah.
Um,
You manifested
I guess I
a
did.
partner from Southern California.
Even though I didn't know what manifestation was back then, I must have done it,
Yeah.
but I do believe in it now a lot. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just imagine like you could have ended up like somewhere completely different.
Yeah, like China.
Yes, like that would have been strange, yeah. But I went to China before I met my wife at the time. I was there for a couple of years already before, so I kind of went by myself, just kind of
Mhm.
curious to snoop around and figure out what was going on. It was pretty wild.
I don't know if I would have been brave enough to go by myself.
Mhm.
Like, definitely having the catalyst or somebody that, but for some reason, when it happened, I mean, I was not scared at all. We just loaded up the car and just drove cross country, and I said bye to my mom and dad like it was no big deal, and went. I mean, just 0 fear, just excitement.
That's so nice. I talk to a lot of people on the podcast who have also kind of grown up not in Southern California and made that journey to Southern
Mhm.
California. And it's always daunting. But the people who seem to have the easiest time with it are someone who they know someone there, or they have an anchor in their family who's kind of connected to a community that they can kind of slide into, right? It's
Yeah.
so hard just coming here and not knowing anyone and then just trying to
Mhm.
start from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that because even knowing him, it was still very hard to make friends. I mean, I would say I didn't make friends till probably we started having children, which was maybe a year, year and a half later. And then I met like my mom community of friends, and that's what really started making me feel rooted here for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because until then, you're just, yeah, I mean, it's so hard to
It's
connect with people.
so hard to break in here
Yeah.
for sure. You have to join something, groups, organizations. You have to definitely to put yourself out there for sure.
Did you give entertainment a try? Because you were watching TV in Ohio when you were a kid and you were
No,
kinda curious?
no,
No?
I didn't. But recently I was on a game show, and that was really fun.
You wanna talk about it? That sounds fun. Which game show?
The Price is Right.
Oh my god, legend.
I know. I got to finally live my childhood dream, so that was pretty epic, and I ended up winning the whole show, so that was really cool.
Holy shit,
I
congratulations.
know, thank you.
Who is the host? Who's the host of The Prices right now?
Drew Carey, he's amazing.
Is he still doing that?
He is still doing and he is amazing. He is so funny,
Mhm.
so personable, and he's from Ohio.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know remember he's from the Midwest. Remember when he had his own show, like the Drew Carey
Oh,
Show?
yeah.
Yeah.
Loved it, and my dad was him for Halloween one year, and he looks just like him. He had the same dark glasses he used to wear,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Wow, dad, you really look like Drew Carey."
And then he had the, Whose Line Is It Anyways?
He was so good on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that show. Improv and thinking on your feet, I think, is really quite a skill.
It's such a skill.
Yeah. So you became a contestant on this game on Price is Right, and then you won it.
Yeah, I know. It's like the things that have to happen to get all the way to that point
Mhm.
is just insane. So for like 5 days after that, I still was like, "Did that just happen?
How did
Did
that
that just happen?" I don't know. It just happened.
how do you even start that process? So, like, you're the first person I know who's ever won on a game show or ever been on a game show. I know people have been in, like, in the audience, right?
Yeah.
I've talked to a few people. But, like, how do you like, what do you have to do to be on the show?
So you get a ticket, which you
How
can
you
get, I think it's, oncameraaudiences.com. So you get a ticket, and then you get in the audience, and before they take you in the studio, you get in line and you get interviewed by the producers. They interview every single person before they go in. And then, I don't know, from there, they just put their show together,
Wow.
you know? And then so you don't know when you go into the studio and you take your seat, you have no idea if you're gonna get called or not, but you know you have a chance. And so you're just sitting there like, hopefully, but I was the very first name they called, so it was like, "Oh my gosh, it's crazy."
That's wild. So they don't even know who's gonna be there. I mean, I thought, like, the studio audience was one thing, and then the contestants were something totally else, but they just picked them from the audience.
They picked them from whoever they interviewed that day right before you go in the studio. It's pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they have no homework every night. They just show up and be like, "Okay, you, and you."
Yeah. And they put it together, and I would imagine there's some kind of formula, like, "Okay, I got a girl here, a boy that's like this, a man, like a grandma," like, I'm sure there's, like, a magic formula.
Mhm.
So it's really, like, how do you fit into the audience that day and the show they wanna have, and I don't know.
And then you won.
And then I
Was there any massive cash prize? Or you win a car or anything?
not a cash prize, but the prizes that I won were pretty amazing, like, I mean, honestly, I'm pretty excited about the diffuser set I won. It was on Oprah's Christmas list, so I'm pretty excited about that. But I won a trip to London, so that's cool. I've never been.
Oh.
So I'll get to take that sometime in the next year, and then,
Is it, like, all expenses, like
all expenses
hotel and
paid, everything, yeah.
wow, London's awesome. Not now. Don't go in February or March or whatever.
I
Like,
heard, like, July, August, September.
mhm. September's spectacular.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
If
That's when
you can swing it.
I wanna go and it's, like, not raining, and I can actually be outside and exploring the city.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
It still rains a lot in the summer, but it's
Oh
nicer.
my gosh. I'm still excited. I'm still excited.
Coming from Southern California, the entire rest of the world's weather sucks.
Yeah, I know. When people say they're going on vacation from Southern California, I'm like, "Why? Where do you go?"
Mhm.
But I know there's many, many, many more amazing places. Like, I love the Caribbean,
Mm.
the clear water. We don't have clear water here,
No.
so I love the clear water. Yeah.
So, I mean, are you actively searching out new game show opportunities, or are you kind of, like, put that into your back pocket for the moment?
Well, I actually so funny, I can't believe we're talking about this, but I actually won one also, like, 7 years ago.
Really?
I don't know why. It was some show, and my friend's like, "Oh, you should try to go on a show through this whatever," and so I submitted and applied, and it was like a new show, with David Alan Grier, the comedian, right?
Yeah, he was on,
He did
Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, so he did a game show for, like, 2 seasons. Trying to remember the name of it. I was on Game Show Network, but he was hilarious in person also. He was really funny, but, you had to, like, look at clips of people telling stories on videos, and you had to say if it was true or not.
Oh, like some kind of true or false
Yeah,
thing, yeah.
true or false, and I won, and then I had to do this speed round, and it was, like, 30 seconds, power answering things, and I woulda won, like, $10,000 if I got them all right, and I started off so well, and then I started getting in my head about it. I was like, "Oh, no, I'm doing so good, the money's mine, I could taste it," and then, no, I freaked myself out,
No.
but I still went home with, like, I don't know, $2,000. It
Okay.
was a fun experience, but
It was
that's
a
it.
worthwhile afternoon.
It was worthwhile. Yeah.
That's wild. That's so
That's
cool.
all I've done. I think I'm done with game shows, but they're fun. I just think it's fun growing up in Ohio, and we don't have that stuff there. So I always like appreciate things out here that I didn't have growing up,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, that's the whole job of this city, right? Is to entertain the world
Yeah. Yeah.
and the Midwest.
Yeah. Exactly. They don't realize how many of us are sitting on the couch as kids watching.
Yeah, and
You know?
it's wild. Like I was driving east on Sunset Boulevard last night in the rain. Remember last night it was
Oh,
raining like
yeah.
crazy, and and they had this whole building just under wraps with lights going in, like filming, and people were coming in and out of this building, pouring rain, and they had a production schedule. They just had to work through the rain and shoot. And it's just like this town just is nonstop, just creating, and that's
Yeah.
what kind of makes it sexy and exciting,
It
right?
is.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it has a vibe.
It does have a vibe, and that's why I love it here.
What's Orange County like? I mean, I've never lived down there.
Oh, it's just beautiful. It really is beautiful. I mean, the beaches, everything is just landscaped very nicely. It's just beautiful. I mean, you have like a great mix of open space with, I don't know. I mean, the ocean is right there. Just beauty is
Mhm.
like the biggest thing that I think of.
You guys were lucky how you escaped the wildfires without getting caught up in all that craziness that happened up here in the Pacific Palisades. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. We've had our share of wildfires down there, but none as bad as the Palisades.
yeah.
Yeah,
That was
thankfully.
wild. I have a friend of mine, David, who was on the podcast, and he is a photographer, and he travels all around the world doing these
Mhm.
like editorial shoots. And he was there like same afternoon when it started happening, and then was there the next morning, and it was like
Did he get some good shots?
yeah, he did, but it was just like devastating to watch because
Yeah.
it was just awful.
I
Like
mean, just watching it on the news was devastating, so I can't even imagine being there, like, being your house, having to evacuate. Because watching it on the news, you're like, "Oh my gosh, like, get out, hurry," and just because I'm in the industry, I've watched so many of these fires, and I knew just from right away, I was like, "This one's different. This is gonna be
yeah.
really bad," and I was just glued to the TV. I couldn't stop watching it.
So how did I mean, so let's go back a little to Orange County. So what were you doing like work-wise in those early days when you first moved out?
So, right out of college, I have a degree in communications, which I love. It's very generic, but also very, very helpful in everything I've ever done business wise. Um,
I studied international politics. It's pretty useless.
sounds like the German language I took in high school.
Yes, something like
I've
that.
not used it once. Wish I took Spanish though.
Mhm.
Um, but I got a job. I worked for Procter and Gamble when I lived in Cincinnati, and their headquarters is there. And I loved that jobs. And when I came out here, they had a job for me, so I got to continue to working at Procter and Gamble.
Oh, that's nice. So you got to come out here with your partner, and then you didn't have to quit.
Well, I had to quit for like a span of it was probably like 9 months to a year or something like that because they didn't have a job for me right away. And then they called me up and said, "Hey, we have an opportunity we think you'd be perfect for. Would you like to do the job?" And I'm like, "Yes," because I kind of floundered a bit when I moved out here. I remember one of the most defeating things I felt when I moved out here was going from, being super well respected, super highly regarded as an employee at Procter and Gamble and producing really, A game level results I felt and was viewed by my peers well and coming out here and I just could not find a job. I mean, it was just so defeating and I ended up working at a temp agency for about 3 months. During that time, I was pregnant with my first child, so I was feeling really, motion sick and, first trimester stuff, and then so it was hard to, like, be working, and I probably didn't dress the best 'cause not everything fit me still, and, just trying to get through, not being sick during the workday, and at the end of the 3 months, I was told they were probably gonna hire me on, and instead they called me into the office, and they said, "You just don't smile enough, and, like, you really you don't dress well enough, and you don't smile enough." And I remember sitting there going, "Are you serious? Like, that's why you're not gonna hire me on?" And I just looked at her, I'm like, "Well, I'm sorry but to hear that, but, like, I'm in my first trimester of pregnancy, and I've been feeling like crap every day and still showing up." So, I remember leaving that experience and just crying the whole entire way home, just going, "What am I gonna do? Like, how can I go from this great, excellent job to, like, not being good enough?" And it was just really devastating to my ego, like, for sure.
Well, they do have like childbirth in Southern California, so it's very strange that other women wouldn't
And she
also.
was a woman. She was a woman telling me
What?
this. I was literally just stunned, like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that."
Yeah.
It's seared in my memory forever.
Mm.
That horrible feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were gonna totally come down with the male boss, routine on that one, because
No,
yeah.
email. I
Sh
don't know that she had children, though, I don't know.
mm.
But I said that, and then she just looked at me like this, and I just walked out. I couldn't even stay.
Oh my god. What a brutal woman.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So so then after that, what, Procter& and Gamble called you back, and then you were able to get back
Mhm.
in with them?
So, luckily, by the grace of God, they called and they had a marketing, opportunity open, and I was like, "Yes, I'll take it. I'm so happy." And so I got to be back in my happy place and had an amazing boss out here and, began to thrive again, had 2 children during that time. And, and then, yeah, shortly after our second child is kinda when the idea for what I'm doing now started.
Well, let's get into that. I mean, how do you kind of exit, I guess, what would be like a really rewarding job at Procter& and Gamble, and then decide to kind of go into this entrepreneurial path and give up all that, what,
It
security and safety?
it was a lot of security and safety, and there were several factors that went into play with that. I had 2 babies at the time, well, 2 toddlers, I guess they were, and so in 2003, was when, my husband at the time came to me and said, "Hey, I, was just on this wildfire and I saw these embers blowing into these vents. All these homes were being lost. Our crew could not save these homes because all the attics were burning."
So sorry, so your husband's a firefighter?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
we didn't get into that yet.
No. Sorry. Jumped ahead.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so his idea, as soon as he came home and told me the idea, I was like, "Oh my god, this like," I felt the instant passion for it as well. It's like, "This is a problem. We have to solve this problem." And he just started tinkering with ideas, and he did all the early development of it, and then by the time 2007 hit, we were ready to hit the market. And I had been traveling a lot for work at the time, and with 2 toddlers, it was just really getting challenging. I didn't wanna be away from them, and it was time to launch this, and I'm like, "Let's go for it."
Okay, so let's back this up. So your husband is a firefighter, and you're working full-time at Procter& and Gamble, and you have 2
So it
kids.
was a lot of high fives. "See you later.
High
I'm
five.
traveling. You're at the station. Hi, bye." Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so walk me through what he's seeing and how this product that you guys developed
Mhm.
together came to be. So he's out there fighting fires, and what's he recognizing?
So, I don't know, you weren't here, but for anyone listening or watching, it wa in San Bernardino is where he worked at the time as a firefighter, and there was a fire back in 2003 called the Old Fire. And in that fire, they lost 500 homes in 24 hours. And his crew was one of the first to respond. And what he saw was just unbelievable to him. He hadn't seen it before. He was pulling up street after street after street, and all these homes were already on fire. And he's just looking at them going, "How are they all already on fire, especially in the attic?" And what he noticed then as he looked were that the embers, there were so many of them, as you can tell from the Palisades fire.
Just like floating around in the wind?
Not even floating, blowing. I mean, just blowing so hard everywhere, swirling. They make their own little tornadoes. I mean, so they're just getting blown right into the attic vents. That's what he started noticing. They're blowing into the attic vents. And that's how they're catching these attics on fire. And there's no way, a couple of fire crews can compete with thousands and thousands and thousands of embers just blowing everywhere, and every home having multiple attic vents, like 20 to 25 attic vents. So they're just getting assaulted by these embers.
So these embers are like little pieces of fire that float through the air, and these are going through the vents, the ventilation shafts in the attics at the top of the homes, and then the homes are catching fire from the inside.
From the inside out.
That's fucked up.
Exactly. I know. And most people don't understand this problem. Like
Mhm.
the average person, had Brent not come and told me about this idea, I knew nothing about this. And so, getting the word out, educating people has been a passion for so long.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, I've seen a lot of property development all around the world. Like, I lived in Shanghai when it went from being a city of like 10 million people to being a city of 30 million people.
Mm.
And then I lived in Dubai during a massive construction boom as well. And it's amazing how poorly made homes are. Like, just
Wow.
just just shit. Like,
Yeah.
they and even around here, there was a home that was being built in January in the middle of the Pacific Palisades. They were still building a home, and it was all just this like plywood, and it was
Oh, yeah.
all wood.
Yeah.
Like there was no cement, no concrete, no
Yeah.
bricks, just wood. And I'm like, guys, like this is part of the problem. Like,
Yeah.
why are we just building more?
Wood.
Yeah, it's shocking actually. So it's like you can imagine like these people just want to build houses as cheaply as humanly possible. Slap a for sale sign on the front and then move to the next one, right? And
Mhm.
without even thinking about how an ember might light the place up.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a lot of pressure on that. I think that, for one builder to switch and say, "Hey, I'm gonna build it with all steel beams and concrete walls and things like that," there's a lot of pressure on price points from homeowners. So, like, who's gonna buy that then? And so I think until all the builders start looking at it together, um, I don't know, we may just keep building with wood. But I have heard after this fire, a lot of people are looking at that really hard now.
Where does the so again, I'm not an American citizen, and I'm a guest in your country. But where the fuck does the government come into all of this? Because like, shouldn't the government like lay down a certain set of regulations? Like, hey, L.A. County, you've had some terrible fires in the last 50 years,
Mhm.
so we're going to come out with these mandatory, you know,
Building codes.
and they have to be followed, or you're going to get fined, like
Yeah.
massively. Use your vents, use fire retardant
Mhm.
paint,
Mhm.
use materials that won't create the chaos that we've just witnessed,
Yeah.
a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't that be like the way to go?
Yeah. And actually, they have. So back in 2008, California has actually been on the forefront for these building codes. So in 2008, they launched the first wildfire building code, part of the California residential code. It's called Chapter 7A. And it went into effect January 1st, 2008, which was right like 1 month after we launched our product, actually. We didn't even know it was coming down the pipeline. So that's one of those things where when you're starting a business, you work really, really hard to set yourself up, but sometimes there's a little luck that comes into play as well. And that was one of those things where we're like, "Oh, wait, there's a building code requiring vents? Oh my gosh." So people started calling us right away, and we were still kinda setting up our company, and so it was like a very fast onslaught for us, um, as far as being new small business owners. But, it started as, so those within Chapter 7A, there is a lot of language about what you have to do if you're building in a wildfire threat zone. So the state has different tiers of moderate, high, very high fire zones, and there's mapping all over the state. And so this code applies if you're in like a high and very high threat zone.
Mhm.
And so that involves everything from siting, you have to have a 1 hour rated test, and there's ways to achieve that with wood, but still the real problem is all the existing homes, because those homes that were built before 2008, they don't know about these codes, and they don't know that they should be retrofitting this stuff. And so, that's the education that the state's trying to do, that we're trying to do, to say, "Hey, um, as existing homeowners, here's what you need to do to bring your building up to code," and already studies have shown that homes built to code have, a 40 to 50% better chance of surviving. And ventilation is a huge part of that. In these last wildfires, the homes that had our vents, I mean, almost all of them survived. It was like 93% of the homes that had our products survived. So these products make huge differences.
So let's go back a bit. So your husband is a firefighter, and he's noticing all these embers flowing through the ventilation shafts in the attic. So the homes are catching fire from the inside. So there's absolutely nothing the firefighters can do to stop that. So then he comes to you and says, we need to do something about this." So
Mhm.
so you guys created a company that makes vents that stop the embers from coming in. Walk me through that.
Yeah, so with a traditional vent, you have basically, it has a lot of large openings in it. And so the embers and the flames and the heat, they'll just blow right in through those openings. The design that Brent came up with has a mixture of overlapping baffles, similar to what you would see in like a professional kitchen, to stop the grease
Mhm.
from going up and starting fires.
For
Uh,
people who cook.
yeah, exactly.
So we're
which
talking
is
about
not me.
we're so we're talking about the oven vent above a stove, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, thank you.
Mm.
And so it's kinda similar to that concept, but he designed it in a way that allows for airflow too, because events, the reason they had the big holes in the beginning is because they were just thought of for ventilation.
Right, because they didn't have air conditioning.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Because a lot of homes that were built, like 'cause so for example, like
Good point.
yeah, because like the Palisades and, Altadena, Pasadena and stuff like that, like a lot of the homes that caught fire, and I've talked to
Mhm.
some firefighters and stuff like that as well, so I'm r knowledgeable about that much, but, a lot of the homes that were built a lot of these homes were built in the 1940s and 50s and
Mhm.
60s, completely not to code, where they wouldn't even have probably retrofitted
Definitely
at
not.
all, and they were gone. And then David, my photographer friend, he has some great shots where you have an old home on one side of the frame and a brand new home on the other side, and the old home is rubble and the new home is still standing. So that completely makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does, and it makes a big difference, and so our vent it starts with the overlapping baffles, it creates a maze, it basically traps the embers, and then on the back side, we still have a screening on it because all vents have to have a screen for the insects and such, so we still have a screening, but the holes are smaller, and then on the inside of those baffles is basically a special strip. It's a special material that when enough heat hits it, it will completely seal off the openings of the vent. And so it's going to create protection then from extreme flames and extreme heat because your home is under assault from all three things. The embers, which cause probably 80% of the damage, but then you also have to worry about your neighbor's house, and if your neighbor's house catches fire, and this is what happened a lot in the Palisades and in Malibu with this Palisades fire, is that the whole neighborhoods were burning because as soon as, like, one house catches fire, it produces enough heat and flames, and if the house next door is not protected either, now those windows will just burst. They will just crack and break open, and that from just the heat itself. And then that leaves open windows literally for the flames to go through and more embers to go through, and so it's like a whole, um, list of things that a homeowner should do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I mean, what, like, is your husband an engineer? Like, how did he come up with this idea? I can and how did you support him? Like, what were the roles and how you guys like designed this? Did you hire like a team to help put this together? Because from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and I love people who start new businesses and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's the bravest thing you can do in
Oh my
life. Is
gosh, yeah.
but I'm just curious, like, how did you guys like actually put this whole thing together?
Well, he's an idea guy, like, he was the idea guy, he understood the problem, he knew how to talk the fire talk, he knew how to relate to other firemen, fire chiefs, industry experts in that world, and so, his focus was on the design and talking about the product, so he did a lot of that in the beginning, and then I loved the idea and all the experience I had at Procter and Gamble, came into effect for me because then I was like, okay, well, we need a marketing plan and then we need a business plan and then we need, to create flyers and brochures and we have to get the word out. And so that's the expertise I came in with, but neither of us had any expertise on manufacturing or how to cost an item properly to make sure you're gonna then MSRP it properly so you're not losing money. And so we just along the way, and one of your other guests I told you I was listening to said it really well. The more you put yourself out there when you're starting a business, the more opportunities just start coming your way. The more people meet you, they want to help you along. People like to help small businesses and people that don't know what they're doing. I think sometimes that thought can hold people back from starting a business or doing what they are passionate about or an idea that they have because they don't want to come off sounding dumb to anybody or making a mistake. And we made so many mistakes in the beginning, but we were never afraid to make the mistakes. And we always sought out information. We were just always curious, well, we would unturn one stone and then it would lead us to another one and then another one. And um, in the early days, we were connected with a consultant, a business consultant, who ended up just really closing that circle for us. Everything that we didn't know, he was able to come in and say, "Hey, this is how you set up your SKU list." I mean, just basic things that we just didn't know. And he helped us with our model numbers and how to source things and inspect manufacturing and just everything like that, pricing.
Where did you
So,
end up manufacturing?
in LA, actually.
Really? Locally?
In commerce. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much manufacturing is actually done here. Like I was chatting with another person a couple months ago, and they said like because of what's it called, in Pasadena they have the rocket lab,
The
um
Caltex.
yeah, well, Caltech, yes, but then they have like there's a bunch of space stuff here before SpaceX was here. Like they had a bunch
Yeah.
of propulsion, jet propulsion, and all these things. And like because of all this manufacturing that was out here already, and
Mhm.
a lot of people have left like jet propulsion and the space program and moved into like designing fancy cars or building, unique stuff for homes, like, but using those same skills that they learned, like
Yeah.
making jets or whatever, into now like making homes better or creating, more unique business environments and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
and so it's amazing, like the community of people that are here doing wild stuff. So you built the whole vent business manufacturing locally.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Even the guy that did his first prototype was just a local sheet metal guy he found. I'm not even sure how he found them. But I remember he drew the idea down on a napkin,
Mhm.
cocktail napkin, literally like they say people do. He just wrote it down on a napkin, and then he found this sheet metal shop guy and went into his garage, and they just tinkered around together one evening, like all night,
Mhm.
until they kind of had the basis of the design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the government helped you out by passing this new legislation for
For
uh,
fire vents.
for fire
Yep.
vents.
Flame and ember resistant vents. So yeah, there wasn't even a market for it before then.
Mhm.
So it's like not only are you coming out with a new product, but you're basically creating an industry that just didn't even exist before. So there was a lot of education
Mhm.
in the early days.
And do you see spikes in a desire for your products after the massive destruction of a
Yes.
wildfire?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's sad.
I wish it was like all year long. It was on people's minds, but I know the reality of it
Mhm.
and it's fine. I mean, when it's raining for, a couple weeks straight, like last season, it's just people aren't thinking about their homes and how to wildfire protect them.
Mhm.
But I feel like this last fire, it's definitely really been an awakeness for sure that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Never seen this before, this level.
It's been scary. So do you guys like sell your product all around the world, or is it like a US only, or is it really just California because this place is wildfire, like, at any moment, anytime?
Yeah, I mean, the bulk of our business is California,
Mm.
but we've also expanded into other states like Washington, Oregon, Texas, Colorado. We sell in Idaho quite a bit,
Mhm.
um, Arizona, Utah. So it definitely has spread. And Canada is another one because British Columbia has a lot of wildfire stuff.
Yeah, because every now and then Canada goes up in flames.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was in New York actually, in the summer of 2023
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
when we had the wildfires in Eastern Canada, and
Yeah.
it all came down. And I remember like I was sitting on the balcony of this hotel and looking out, and all of Manhattan was covered with this like orange glow of the sun trying to penetrate through all the
Yeah.
wildfire like haze that was coming in.
Mhm.
It was wild.
Even my family in Ohio, because they're all still there, they got that smoke, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is so crazy, like, all this wildfire smoke," and I'm like, "This is what we experience all the time,
Yeah.
all the time out here," so
So let's break this down. So if you're building your own home, for any home builders out there, if you're building your own home and you have a budget allocation for the cheapest vents you could possibly find, like it's not a priority for you, you don't really care, just give me the cheapest
Mhm.
vents possible, or whatever is the lowest standard that is, allowed by that bylaw that came in 2008. Like how much more are your vents cost wise that could actually save your home?
It's so minimal. It's so minimal. I mean, I actually did a study on the homes, all the homes that survived the wildfire, what they paid for those vents and the installation versus the value of the home that they helped save, and it was like 0.01% of the value of the home they saved is what they spent to get that product installed.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just like when you're installing it during a new build process, like I hope that all the rebuilds, in Pasadena, Malibu, and Altadena, hopefully they're all rebuilt with all the best of everything. But there's been studies published where the increase was so minute to use fire rated building products that it doesn't even make sense not to.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's the education, right? Like how do you educate the homeowner or the landowner or the construction crews or the architects who are building these homes and picking these materials? Because like before I was introduced to you
Mhm.
and started to understand what you do, like I had no idea this was even a thing. Like I
Yeah,
was just
most people don't.
yeah,
Yeah, understandably so. Yeah.
that's wild. That's wild. Do you think are your vents that you make, are they specifically for, like, single family homes, or are they also for, like, apartment complexes and shopping malls? Like, what are the usages like?
Definitely residential homes, but we're also in apartment buildings, multifamily, they call it. So apartment buildings, lodges, hotels have used us. Yeah. I mean, the only place we wouldn't be is if it was some kind of fancy mechanical system where they have their own kind of active air system,
Mm,
similar to like an air conditioner or something,
mhm.
going in like a some kind of industrial building or something. But otherwise, yeah, if you have typical passive air vents, you can put us in.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then potentially save your home.
Mhm.
Do you think that, like, Pacific Palisades and Altadena and stuff like that, do you think they're gonna be rebuilt with, like, single family homes? Because I'm really, like, because obviously you've been studying the wildfires and you're an expert in this field, and I'm always trying to ask people who have been kind of dancing around this area,
Mhm.
because I feel like the single family homes that were out there were beautiful, and it was
Very
obviously was a desirable place to live, but I'm just wondering, like, with all these people swooping in to buy up all this land and kind of exit all these other homeowners and things like that, I'm wondering what's gonna be built next and whether it's gonna
Mhm.
be like multifamily homes or small low-rise apartments like the one we're in now, or
Mhm.
I'm just curious, like, what's gonna be back out there and what it's gonna look like because I know it's gonna be completely different.
Yeah, and I think that's the saddest part about all of that. That's the part that makes my stomach kind of like turn and makes me feel really sad for the people that live there. Because, like, being a mom with kids and that sense of community of your kids just going outside in the street or saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go next door and knock on their door." They may have their 5 best buds that lived on the street with them, and now what? Now they're not there, like, they just lost their neighbors that were their best friends, and even the parents, or you're usually very close and friends with all the neighbor moms or the neighbor it's just you not only lost your home, but you lost your sense of community.
Even the school burnt down.
Yeah, and people are shoveling their driving their kids an hour
Mhm.
to school now. But that's the part that makes me the most sad. So when I think about what's gonna go there in the rebuild, I think it's gonna depend on how they zone things. I mean, is the city gonna keep the zoning the same? Because if it was zoned for a single family home before, then if they keep them the same, they can only build a single family home there again. But if the city decides to rezone and allow for multifamily or, um, more businesses to be built there, I don't know. I was at the International Builder Show last week, and I was happy to hear a lot of architects stopping by saying, they would see our product and they're like, "Oh, this is great. I'm gonna spec you in. I'm doing 18 homes right now for rebuilds in Pacific Palisades, or I'm doing 10 homes in Altadena, and already got their plans almost done, and we're almost ready to submit to the city." And it's like that surprised me. I was so happy
Mm.
to see that this quickly they're already getting new plans together, um, getting them ready to submit to the city, and those were all residential replacing residential.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that was just a tiny snippet of 16,000 total structures that were burnt. But, if that's an indication, maybe there's a chance
Yeah.
it'll still rebuild similar to the community that it was when it burned.
You hope it won't get lost, right?
I hope so,
Yeah.
but I'm sure there will be some areas because I know some people who were underinsured or didn't have insurance at all. They have no choice but to just take the money from a developer that's offering it,
Mhm.
and they're just gonna go and never come back. I've heard stories like that before too.
Yeah, it's kinda creepy. Like, I've lived in some crazy parts of the world, and I've traveled through a lot of it, and, um, and it's super common in other countries and, for the government or real estate developers to get into an argument about a piece of property, and then all of a sudden, like a month later, that entire piece of property goes up in flames. And then, yeah, and then it's like, well, I wanted to buy it for you for this price, and now it's rubble. So I'll offer you this.
No way.
And that's part of like a negotiation tactic. And it happens all
Oh
the
my
time.
gosh, that's so wrong.
It's so wrong. But it happens everywhere. So I feel like so I was in Turkey. So during COVID, I was spending a lot of time in Turkey, and there's this beautiful town in southern Turkey called Bodrum,
Mhm.
and um and it's a resort town. So, and I remember these property developers, they wanted to build like two or three hotels along this beautiful stretch of coastline, and it was a protected forest area and blah blah blah.
Oh, no.
And it was in the news all the time when I was there, because I was there for like 3 months. And then, like, right when I was getting ready to leave, that whole like forest area just went up in flames. And then like
That's
two
terrible.
yeah, and then 2 weeks later the government sold the property to the developers.
Gosh, that's so terrible.
And then the government was in on it too, probably, and they got kickbacks and things like that. So like this happens everywhere in the world.
Mhm.
And then when this stuff was going on in the Palisades and Altadena, I'm looking at all these beautiful old homes. I'm seeing pictures of like what the neighborhoods used to be like,
Mhm.
homes that were built in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. All of like old Hollywood was living out in the Pacific Palisades. Like
Mhm.
Billy Crystal was talking about like how he lost his home. And I'm
Oh, I
just,
hadn't heard that.
yeah, well, one of his homes, I guess.
Yeah.
Billy Crystal's probably still doing okay.
Yeah.
But Altadena is really rough, because I do these live shows once a month, and I'm doing one tomorrow actually in Los Globos in East Hollywood, and we're kind of still doing raising money for people who are victims of the fires and first responders and stuff like that. And my last show was there in February, and we had a few families from Altadena who'd lost
Mhm.
everything. And it was just shocking. Like, people are really sad for everyone in the Pacific Palisades, but that was a very kind of wealthier neighborhood. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes people had second homes that they could go to, but in Altadena, a lot of them were renters,
Mhm.
and at a very different socioeconomic level, and they just lost everything, and now they're completely homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even heard in Altadena, I was reading, that there was one street where there were 5 different family members owned homes on the same street and lived in them because they all wanted to be close to each other,
Mhm.
and 4 of the 5 burned. And now that family is, like, split up. That's
Yeah.
so sad,
Yeah.
you know?
How great would it be to like live on one block and have like your whole family there as well, and
Oh,
all the
yeah.
kids can just play
I would
together?
love that, as I miss my Ohio family a lot.
Yeah.
I would love to have them all in the same street. Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, you've been running this business now since like 2007.
Mhm.
And that's, I mean, that's a long time. That's 23 years. Congratulations. That's no joke.
Yeah, thank you.
Is it 23 years or
18 years.
18 years? Yeah.
18.
My math is terrible. Sorry. But I'm just curious, like, I mean, where are you now in the business stage versus like a decade ago? Because California has pretty nasty wildfires it feels like every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
There's like a massive kind of uppick in development afterwards and things like that. Like,
Mhm.
where are you in your kind of business cycle at this moment?
So we started end of 2007, and then those first days were kind of slow. Even though we had the building code, it was still during the housing crash here. So it's like we launched a business during a housing crash. So that was really hard. There was not a lot of new building going on out here during that time.
And not a
Um,
lot of refurbishment probably either.
no,
Yeah.
there wasn't. So, we would get some orders. I think the first year we probably did like 80,000, maybe 100,000, definitely
Units.
dollars.
Oh, dollars. Okay.
And, like, so, It was very slow start, and I remember even early on, one of our friends, was like, "Why are you doing this? You're, like, losing money. Why would you do something where you're losing money?" But we believe so passionately in what this product would do, to save homes and help people protect their their everything, and, we just kept going because we knew, Brent had seen it firsthand. Had done all the research. I mean, we talked to all the fire officials. We knew that this was a legitimate problem. So, we just kept going, kept educating, kept showing up everywhere we could. Insurance companies early on really took hold of this, and they started offering discounts to homeowners, who would install our products. So that was like a lot of our retrofit business in the beginning.
Did you reach out, like, to the insurance companies
Yeah.
and be like, "Hey, you guys gotta certify this
Mhm.
and make it
Absolutely.
worthwhile?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the first things we did.
What's that
Yeah.
conversation like? Like, because these insurance companies, they just seem kinda faceless, and there's no one really likes paying insurance,
I
and
know.
so I'm just curious, like, what those conversations are like in the early days.
The first one we talked to who really, took hold of it, from the start was AIG. They're a private client group, the ones that insure the high net worth homes. And so, they were tired of seeing some of the losses, and they understood the technology, they understood the problem, they understood the risk, and they knew that our vents would reduce risk for their homeowners. So they were the first ones to offer a pretty good sized discount to homeowners who did it. And um so we did a lot of insurance retrofitting, some new construction work. When 2017-ish hit, 18, um, that's when California started seeing some really bad fires with some really major losses. The Thomas Fire, the Woolsey Fire down here in LA and Ventura counties. Up north, you had the Camp Fire and a whole bunch of them that happened in Northern California, and so the industry really started to pick up. The building codes for the wildfire zones got even more strict, I believe in 2018. I think those got even more strict, and, the awareness was really starting to grow, and then, we always had a vision that we had 4 kids by this time, by the way. So
You guys are busy.
yeah. So around, 2010 and 2012, we had 2 more children, and there were times after that where I just about threw in the towel. I mean, it was very, very, very overwhelming to raise 4 children, 2 of them, baby and toddler, and it just seems kind of like sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, can be very lonely at the top. Like, you feel like you're in a silo sometimes. You're the one making all the decisions. You're the one that's carrying all the stress and all the financial. You're the one constantly feeling like, "I don't know how to do that. I really am not the best at anything, but I'm really good at my product knowledge, and I know what it can do." But everything else, it's just a lot of pressure sometimes, and I think that was a time, if at all during this process, I thought, "I don't know if I can do this anymore," and I just really thought, "I don't know," but
Plus you're working like 18 hours a day because when you're an entrepreneur, the buck stops with you. So if
yeah,
you get an email
at
like from
night.
yeah, you gotta answer it. If
Yeah,
there's a call coming in at 10 p.m., you gotta answer it. Like there's no turning off your phone at
no.
5 p.m. and leaving work, right?
No,
Yeah.
I remember we worked out of our home this whole time, like, our garage was our prep area,
I love that.
and so I would, work from home on the couch, and, I remember I would have my youngest would sit next to me, and I would have Disney movies on for him, but it wasn't ideal, and I spent as much quality time as I could, but sometimes I just had to be on my laptop answering those emails, returning phone calls, and we just snuggled. He loved it. He would just snuggle with me and I would work, and, we just made it work somehow. And, but we always had a vision of one day we would sell to somebody who was in the fire world and could take it to the next level. We just knew with the 4 children, there was only so far we could take it, and we needed help. And in 2019, the company who owns us now, Tenmat, Global Fire Protection, they found us and they reached out and said, "Hey, are you guys interested in selling?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "If we can work out terms, like, yeah, let's talk."
12 years into your journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of stress,
Yeah.
lots of stress. Yeah, you mentioned, like, starting a business is really brave. I mean, I the adventure has been so amazing, but you do have to have some thicks you have to be a fighter for sure.
Mhm.
You have to, like, love and feel so much passion about what you're doing for sure, to stick in it. And
What was the name of that company and what do they do? The ones that came in and offered to buy you?
it's called Tenmat,
Okay.
Tenmat, Global Fire Protection, and they're based out of the UK, and,
Well, there's no fires there. It rains too much.
very true.
Sorry, bad joke, but no, it's strange that they're based out of the UK.
Well, because they don't do wildfires, but they make, intumescent, which is what you call materials that will expand, when they reach a certain temperature and seal off openings and cavities in buildings. So they do a lot of multi-level floors. So if one floor catches fire, they have stuff that you put in between the walls that will seal off so the fire doesn't spread from one floor to the next floor.
Oh, that seems
It's
really smart.
required in Europe, actually. So, I think they had a hotel or high-rise fire that went really bad, and the fire can spread up to the and through the cavities in between floors, and the whole entire building just catches fire very quickly. And so now they require you to have these things in the cavities in the walls so that it seals off, preventing the fire from spreading floor to floor.
Hmm.
And, so anyways, they were looking for, another fire protection company in the US on the West Coast specifically, and they found us. So we started talking. They did a lot of testing with our product, and we came to great terms, and we really felt great about the people there. Um, and it was overall the best experience I could have had as far as an acquisition. We had had people approach us before that, and it was just never I like to just sit across the table from someone and just say, "Yeah, what do you want? What do I want?" I'm just very old school like that, and some companies would try to bring in brokers, and they would say, "We'll talk to our broker only," you know,
Mhm.
and then you would wait weeks to go back and forth, and it just never, like, felt good.
Mhm.
And this company was just, "Hey, let's get on the phone. Let's fly out there. Let's just sit across the table. What do you want? What do you want?" And I love doing business like that. A handshake deal. Our first manufacturer, we didn't even have a contractor.
Mhm.
They're still our manufacturer to this day.
Oh, wow.
It was a handshake deal. And people probably look back and go, "You are so dumb to do that," but I don't know.
How often how often does the technology for your vents have to be upgraded? Like, if you come out with a design in 2008 or 2010,
Mhm.
like, how long does that design stay, relevant compared to new materials coming out or new science that comes out? And how often are you, like, totally, like, redesigning your
R&D
yeah,
and stuff.
your product line?
Yeah, so our first iterations of the product did not have the intumescent expanding strip in them. And that was because the main issue at the time was embers. Everyone was very concerned about the embers. And the required national testing at the time was set at certain temperatures and certain levels. And then as the industry developed, they adjusted the testing to make those temperatures get even lower. Like am I saying that right? They made it harder to pass basically with the temperatures.
Mhm.
So they'll put thermal couplers on the backside of the vent, and then they put the flame there, and they measure the heat and the flame and everything. And so, um, when they adjusted that, we realized that we had to put something in there that could handle even more intense heat. And so that's when we had the intumescent strips in there. And initially, we were using a different intumescent strip that I had sourced, and then when this company found us, we tested their intumescent strip, and it was, like, not even it was amazing. So, it worked great.
So the company that you were already using some of their products for your vents, they ended up being the ones that wanted to come in and acquire you.
So, it was a different one.
Oh, okay.
Same kind of technology, but it was a different manufacturer,
Mhm.
and they came in yeah,
Okay. And
yeah.
how often are you, like, fully upgrading your entire product offering?
So there's not I mean, other than that, the only thing that we do is create different types of that technology. So the technology itself is already proven. I mean, not just in the test lab with flames, embers, and heat, but now, I mean, we've got the Palisades fire and such an extreme fire. as its, proof of concept, I guess, so to speak. And so there hasn't been any need yet to do anything else to it.
Hmm.
But what we do is we create different products to be used on a home, like on balconies and decks. We now have a balcony inspection vent product that goes on the underside of balconies because over time, the wood structures that are inside your balcony that are holding it up, if you're not ventilating it, it can rot and then collapse when too much weight gets on it. And so up in Berkeley and also in Malibu, they had a couple of really bad balcony collapses where people were either injured or actually died from them. And so California now has some Senate bills where you have to install balcony inspection vents and conduct inspections on the wood membranes inside those older balconies. I think now they're starting to build them with steel. And to your point
Right?
earlier.
Just get in there with the steel and concrete.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, but they wanted them fire rated. And it's like, hey, our technology, that's very easy to apply our technology onto a balcony inspection vent that you can open and close. And
Mhm.
so we did that. We've come out with a ridge vent, so just different types of technologies and uses. And it usually comes from customers calling us going, do you guys make this? Do you make this? And when we get enough of those calls, I'm like, we need to make that.
Hmm.
You
And then you build for spec. Like when people come and say like, "Hey, can you do this?" Then you they pay you, and then you go and build them, and then you deliver them, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
but if it's a new technology like a balcony vent or something like that, then that involves like R&D. So we got to get the samples made, go back to the test lab, test everything out.
How do you test them out? Like,
Oh, that's my favorite part.
do you just like get a flamethrower?
I
Like,
love the test lab.
you got to walk me through this. There's got to be photos of this somewhere, or like a YouTube video of like,
I
just
do have some YouTube videos, or they're not on YouTube, but I have some videos. But yeah, it's fun. I love R&D because that fulfills like the curious entrepreneur part in me, the innovation. I love innovating.
well, it's science, right? Like that's the fun
It
part.
is. And I never loved science in school
Until it became practical.
till it became practical.
Yeah.
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 But I love designing ideas, drawing it out, going, "Hey, is this gonna work?" And then you go and it works and you're like, "Oh my god, this is awesome." And then you see people ordering it and you're like, "Yay." And it's liked and that's my favorite part. But yeah, you bring it in and there's standardized testing that these California specific labs do. And it's like a 3-part test. They have tests where they have a burner underneath your vent, like about this far below, something like that, and then they light this huge flame, and then they slide your vent on top of the flame, and guess what? No flames are allowed to come on the other side of your vent, and so you're just watching and testing different, designs and things like that.
And then at a certain temperature, that vent closes, right? And then nothing gets through.
Correct,
Yeah.
and our vent actually it closes instantaneously because that flame that they do in the test lab is so intense. It's like the second you slide our vent over, it's closed,
Hmm.
like in a nanosecond, so no flames ever get through it.
That's wild.
I know, it's I
I
like test lab day, yes. My hands get dirty, I have goggles on,
Yeah.
I wear tennis shoes, it's
Science experiment.
oh, it's fun.
My buddy David Buto, the photographer, he had this one shot of being up in the Palisades, and there was this one moment where the embers were coming down the street at him with the wind, and I guess the wind was coming from inland out to the ocean, right? That's the Santa Ana wind that
Yep.
everyone was talking about, and the wind was like 80, 90 miles an hour,
Mhm.
and the embers were coming so fast along the ground, like, and through the air, that it looked like the ground was like lava
Oh my
moving.
god.
And when people out there who are listening, like I don't think they really get how dangerous embers are that are moving at like 100 miles an hour in the wind, and what that looks like. And I remember just looking at David's photo because I've never been in a
Wanna see
fire.
these photos.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to the chat with
Yeah,
David. Yeah,
great.
because we went through all his photos and we put them on the podcast so people
Oh.
can see them and stuff like that. I have a program for that, but not today. But it was wild. It just looked like the entire street was on fire.
Yeah.
And then all that shit kind of gets blown up into homes, and then if they can find a way into your home, you're
Mhm.
finished, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
No one
they
thinks about that.
they don't, and everyone also thinks it's not gonna happen to me because I live far enough away. I'm not the house that backs up to the green forest. I'm like 10 streets over, and I think that this fire especially proved you can be at the beach, and your house can get devastated by embers.
Mhm.
'Cause those beach homes, it just started with probably one that had all those embers that were blowing around, just got to one, and those homes were, like, this close together,
Mhm.
and it just kept blowing out windows after windows, and it just spread to that entire row.
Did you see that one shot? It was in the news everywhere where it was just like destruction everywhere in Malibu, and then that one concrete home was still standing.
No.
I'll send it to you. You gotta see it. Yeah.
Well, when I went there and I was driving on PCH and I was looking at that row of homes and they were all destroyed, and the only thing I could see still standing was a still perfectly intact tacked steel spiral staircase,
Mhm.
and it still maintained its shape to perfection, like, you coulda still walked up and down that steel staircase. I mean, it was incredible,
Mhm.
and it was like a beacon of something. I don't know.
You'd think that people would look after this massive, devastating experience that everyone's been through, and it's touched everyone here in LA. Like,
Mhm.
you think that people would be like, okay, what was still standing?
Yeah.
Okay,
A lot of chimneys.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's copy what was still standing and let's rebuild based on what was still standing, right? You're talking about like, high density steel that can withstand a lot of heat and concrete.
Yeah.
And, but I was chatting with a real estate agent the other day, also on the podcast. Um, and he was telling me that to build a home using wood versus using concrete. If you use concrete, it can cost up to 2 times
Mhm.
more in the build cost, to use concrete and brick and stuff like that versus just wood.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a huge reason we still use wood, for sure. I mean, because even in these rebuilds, insurance is only gonna give you a certain amount of money, and that's gonna be based on the value of the home at that point. So for someone to choose to build with concrete and steel beams and everything else, they're gonna have to come out of pocket for that.
Mhm.
So, some people will be able to afford it, and that's probably exactly what they'll do.
Yeah.
And then some people, the majority of people will not, you
But then
know.
they're setting themselves up for another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Coffee Park, it's a whole, like, political thing because the neighborhood of Coffee Park up in Northern California, it's been decimated twice over the past 100 years by wildfires, um, but the jurisdiction does not consider it a fire zone, a fire hazard zone. So because they don't label it a fire hazard zone, insurance companies don't cover the cost of, like, upgrading it to code, which
Mhm.
would include all these fire hazard materials and things like that that would make it more fire resistant. And so some of that stuff, it's it comes down to like cost,
Mhm.
insurance, and then hoping it's not going to happen again
Right.
in the same neighborhood, the odds. But it has happened to the same neighborhood, sadly.
It does, and, like, that whole Malibu, PHC, Pacific Palisades, like, I remember seeing pictures of that 2017 or 2018 fire that you were mentioning, like,
Mhm.
I remember seeing pictures of people driving down the 405 and having flames, like, come across the 405,
Oh, yeah.
like,
That
from.
was like they were all saying like Armageddon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of by the Getty Center, I think.
Right,
I'm
exactly
just
there, yeah.
missed that,
I
yeah.
mean, like, this shit happens all the time here.
It's getting really bad too, the frequency and the severity of them.
Mhm.
That's what has shifted a lot.
So we were here, watching, and
Mhm.
obviously the Pacific Palisades is quite far from where we are now at the studio. Um, but and for people who don't know, like, we're on the border of Beverly Hills and kind of West Hollywood, and the Palisades is a good 20-minute drive on a good day.
Mhm.
So we were just sitting here being like, well, if the flames hop the 405, we've got a real problem because then it's going to go through UCLA, it's going to go through Bel Air, Beverly Hills, and then wherever else. Like, that's kind of what we were thinking. But the Palisades was gone in the first like 24 hours.
Yeah.
But then people started lighting fires in.
Yeah, it was like everywhere, right? It's weird.
It was so strange. So in where is it called? Not Laurel Canyon, but the one over from Laurel Canyon.
Sunset Boulevard, right? Like
Well,
the
just
the
above.
Sunset Fire just above that.
Well, that's where it was happening. So that
Yeah.
night, so it was Wednesday, January 6th or 7th or something like that, and the Runyon Canyon. That's when people were
Yes.
lighting fires in Runyon Canyon, and then they were saying like it was going to spread right across the entire Hollywood Hills because the wind was going east to west,
Yeah.
and it was going to just, whoosh, but it
I
never.
was worried it was gonna get to, like, Bel Air and West Hollywood for sure, yeah. Yeah, that one was concerning, but by that point, they had the air patrols in there, and they were able to drop. It was so amazing once they can get the air help,
Mhm.
and they're dropping water and retardant, and once I see, like, a lot of air support,
Mhm.
I'm like, "Oh, they're gonna knock this out fast." It makes so much difference, and Palisades didn't have all that soon enough.
It didn't, and I was actually speaking to a retired fire captain, and he was telling me
Mhm.
that you can't fly air patrol in those heavy
You
winds.
can't, it's
Yeah.
too dangerous.
So they basically had to sit on their hands and do the best they could
Screamed.
with the ground units that
Mhm.
they had, which were outmatched. And of course, there's stories about fire hydrants not having water in them or not having enough pressure in them or whatever. But they couldn't bring in the air support until
Couldn't
like,
bring in the water. I mean, it was just a mix of anything you could imagine that could go wrong,
yeah.
went wrong. And one fireman I talked to, the winds were blowing so hard that he said that houses would be on fire. They'd have like a 30-foot flame going up. And then the winds were so hard, that flame would be literally horizontal and it would be crossing the street, touching the house across the street.
Hmm.
So it was like, I mean, that's how it spread so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And none of these old homes had your vents.
No, some of them did. And they survived. The majority survived. Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, have you ever thought about branching out into other products or just like, because I mean, have you ever thought about being like kind of like a one-stop shop for fire prevention or
Al
is
always, I think about that always.
yeah.
I mean, because I'm very passionate about all of it, and to your point, the ember-resistant vents are just one piece of the puzzle. We're a big piece, but if those homes, sometimes there's things you can't control, like if you don't have dual pane thermal, you know, glass windows, then the heat from the neighbor's house who caught fire because maybe they didn't have the vents, then that heat now is busting your windows. So it's like you need to do a whole list of things to really have the best chance. And so whenever I do talk to people, I actually got my wildfire mitigation specialist certification last year because I do feel passionate about all of the things, not just the vents.
Hmm. What does it take to become a specialist in wildfire mitigation?
You just have to go to a course. The state offers courses, and I went to, oh, it was a week-long course,
Hmm.
and you learn about everything, and then you go and you have to walk properties and go with them and tell them what you see, what you would recommend to the homeowner, and yeah, it's very good.
I had one friend on the podcast. His name's Brian, and he was a retired firefighter.
Mhm.
And he came out with a product actually before the wildfires happened, but now there's been huge demand for it since.
Oh, wow.
But he came out with this product. So he was telling me, and a lot of people might not know this, but because he was a firefighter for like 25 years. He retired. He's like, I think he's in his late 50s or early 60s now.
Mhm.
Big, big, massive man. Played university or college football. But he was telling me that a fire truck actually holds very little water.
Mhm.
And 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 then of course the fire trucks have to be totally reliant um on the fire hydrants. And
Right.
of course those are hit and miss sometimes. But
Mhm.
so he's created this product, and it's you put it in your backyard, and if you have a pool in your backyard, you put one end in the pool and then it shoots water over your entire house to put out any embers
Nice.
that might attach it to your house. And he said like, because he's like most pools
Mhm.
of like an average middle class home, and for people who don't know, people in Southern California, they have a lot of pools. Like there's a lot of pools
A
around.
lot.
But he said like the average pool, and these aren't like very luxurious homes, but the average pool can hold like 10 to 20 times more water than a fire truck.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just look at a truck, like,
Yeah. There's not a lot of space
there's
though.
not a lot of space to put water, you know?
So he came out with this thing, and it shoots like an umbrella of water over your property
Yeah,
based on the water in your pool, because a lot of people like didn't think that that's a water source that could actually save your home. So he came out. He's kind of come out with this whole company now, trying to do that. So I just thought that was super interesting as well, because there's a lot of like little things that people can do. Like you can start with the vents, you can start with the double pane glass, you
mhm,
can, if you have a pool in your backyard, that's a
mhm.
source of water. Like there's things that are happening.
It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great ideas out there. I mean, just being in the industry for a long time, I've met so many entrepreneurs that have stories like your friend, that have developed products that keep the home safer during wildfires. And, even after these fires, in talking to them, it's like, yeah, the homes that had my product, like they survived and they did well. It's um it's been rewarding from an entrepreneur in fire protection to hear those stories afterwards, to get
Mhm.
the calls from the homeowners saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you." But there's those roof sprinkler systems that you can put pipes around the perimeter of your roof,
Mhm.
um, and they can spray water or retardant, and they're activated by satellites in space and apps on your phone. I mean, it's like pretty impressive stuff out there. If people start looking,
Mhm.
they'll find some really good stuff.
Are your products available in Hawaii? Because I remember, like, what was it,
Yes.
last or 2023, Malibu went up in
Yeah.
flames, right?
China.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. And they're all starting to rebuild now too.
Yeah.
Yeah. A similar thing. The winds just came. It was that perfect storm of everything. Winds, embers, flames. People just weren't ready.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So this UK-based company came in and acquired you in 2019, but you're still working for your company. Like, so how does that happen? Like, because most people, when they sell their companies, maybe they walk away, but you seem still really passionate about it. So how has that partnership worked?
I'm super passionate. And so, yeah, I was nervous because I'm like, okay, how's this going to go?
Yeah.
But I never was like egotistical about being the boss. I knew what I was really good at, and I knew what I really was craving for help. And so I welcomed it. I really welcomed their leadership, their structure. It brought me back to like feeling like my days at Procter and Gamble,
Mm.
where there was more structure and I really liked it. And they're wonderful people. They've been extremely supportive the entire way, even after the acquisition. And Brent's still involved a little, but his passion was really in the idea and finding a solution to the problem. He's still a firefighter.
Oh, really? He's still
Yeah.
doing that?
He's still a firefighter. And, in the busiest days of our business, he'd be working 60-hour weeks as a firefighter because all the overtime. We would have 4 kids, to take care of, and then he was putting in time with Brandguard Vents, the company, and so his life was just was a lot, and you can only operate at that level for so long, so I think he welcomed, someone else coming in, and he knew it kinda got beyond the point of idea, but moved on into, like, okay, now it's, like, business administration and things like that. And which I think most founders are like that. They're idea people, and then maybe they don't wanna stay on for the next phase. They feel like their job is done. But he still actively will speak, to communities or people or other firemen if requested. He'll still do stuff like that, provide advice and help.
Well, he almost came here with you today, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
almost.
This studio does not work with 2 guests. That's
Okay.
that's the problem. So I'm glad that you came. I'm glad that you came, and that's amazing though that he's still maintained, and performed all of his firefighting duties through this entire entrepreneurial process.
You gotta get that pension, right? Can't walk away from the pension.
No, it's quite good. I quite good. I hear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where do you see your business kind of moving forward in the next few years? I mean, what I mean, obviously we've had the Palisades, Altadena. There's going to be a lot of rebuilding. No doubt you're going to be very busy, through this next few years, probably with all the rebuilding that needs to be done. But where do you see your business moving forward?
I think, the biggest thing I hope will happen, because I already see it happening, is more adoption of the technology in general, by not just housing builders, but also, homeowners and retrofitting and insurance companies maybe in mandating. But people are definitely there was some awareness in the industry of products like this. And like I said, the building code would require it for new construction, but um, I think now, and not just vents, but all home hardening type of things like certain kind of windows, certain kind of roofs, certain kind of siding. I think that it's just going to be pushed even harder, and people will understand now why it's important. I think that that's kind of been hard to communicate, especially from the manufacturer. It's like, oh, these are important. You need these.
Mhm.
And then people look at you, well, of course you say that, you're biased, you're the manufacturer. But now I think with this fire and the fires before, I think that now there's enough to say, hey, you need this because it makes a difference, not because I, the manufacturer, am saying it. So I think there's going to be a lot more discussions about it. I think it's going to be incorporated even more so than it already was with insurance companies. I've had track builders, come up last week and say, "Hey, we're interested in building a fireproof home
Mhm.
that we want to now sell." I mean, these were ideas we were pitching 15 years ago, and it just wasn't. mm,
Timing.
It is timing,
Yeah.
and again, I don't fault anybody for it. It's a lot. It's a big shift in the way you think, but sometimes these things take time to adopt new ways of thinking.
So if I wanted to build a home, for example, in the Pacific Palisades, and let's just randomly suggest that the home build is going to cost $1 million. Let's just use a hypothetical number. What percentage of that home build would be needed to make the home properly fireproof with your vents, but also any other existing technology that you could see that would help? Like, is it like a 10% increase in production cost for the
No,
home?
I think it's the study that I saw. I wanna say it was like 1 to 3%.
1 to 3%
Yeah.
to make your home fireproof in the world's most
Yeah.
dangerous
To
fire.
code, to bring it to code.
Yeah.
No home is ever fireproof, but we wanna make it as close to fireproof as possible. But yeah, the study I forget who did the study.
1 to 3% though, that seems like a
Very
no-brainer.
low. Very, very, very low.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning, a long time ago, when all these products started coming out, you know, there were a lot of rumors going around, It's so expensive," and, people were lobbying against the codes. I mean, builders, people did not want that set of codes to come out,
Mhm.
and I really do credit, CAL FIRE and California Building Commission for pushing those through because there was a lot of people that did not want those codes to go through, and they stood strong on it. They're like, "No, this needs to happen,"
Mhm.
you know?
Well, the builders are the wrong people to be leaning on for information because they just wanna mass produce a bunch of homes and get in and out as quickly as
Yeah.
possible. They don't really sure they'll care about the quality, I suppose, some more than others, I'm guessing, but, like, they don't give a shit if your home lasts 50 years or not.
Well, the one thing I could never understand was, even from a marketing standpoint, to say, "Hey, I'm selling you a home that is fireproof,"
Mhm.
or close to fireproof. And, I always thought that's a fantastic selling point. Like, as a homeowner, I would wanna know that,
Mhm.
but I just don't think that the fire problem at the time was elevated enough
Mhm.
for them to see that, because it costs more money,
Yeah.
and who's gonna spend more money on a house,
But
you know?
if you think about $1 million build, okay, let's hypothetically $1 million build, and then you're saying 1 to 3%
Yeah.
to make it up to fire ready code, not
Mhm.
fireproof, but as fire ready as you can be. So like 1 to 3%, so that's $50,000, $100,000, $150,000, something like that. But then you must also get breaks on your insurance for doing all those things too.
Yes, the kid there.
So I mean, like if you're building $1 million home and you don't have another 50K to put into your home to make it as close to fireproof as humanly possible, and then also getting a discount on your insurance, then like what are you doing? Or but then again too, like maybe the knowledge is part of it that people just aren't aware that all these technologies exist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of all of these, and that's why, like, my purpose and what I'm most passionate about is just educating, and that's why I'm really happy to be on your show because any platform I can have where I'm trying to educate and get the word out about home hardening and about the things you can do, and that a lot of them are DIY, or DIY. A lot of them are DIY and or not as expensive, and to do them during the rebuild process or in new construction anywhere is always the least expensive way to do it. I even heard someone last year saying that, and I thought this was a fantastic idea, that a lender at the time of sale, a lender should require these things to be retrofitted at
Mhm.
the time of sale. And when that happens, they tack on that cost to the homeowner's home loan.
That's genius.
I know.
Because then they can pay it over time with the home loan.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it makes it like what, maybe, I don't know, 50 extra bucks a month or like something very tiny when you're spreading it out over a 30 or 40-year loan.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if that's something that's going forward, but I heard someone talk about that. I'm like, that is genius.
So I've got an interesting story for you. So I'm like a huge like libertarian. Like I hate government, but I've lived in places around the world where the government isn't always the best. And I'm not even talking about the United States. But so I'm very much like I like to be independent. I don't want the government up in my business, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I grew up and I've lived around the world and it's been a strange journey. But after the Pacific Palisades fire and just watching all that destruction, I'm just like, how can the government not be more involved in making these homes more safe?
Mhm.
Because we are living in a tinderbox
Mhm.
of Southern California
Yeah.
with no precipitation. I know it's raining probably at the moment while we're in the studio, but we get like 5 days of rain a year, and we get crazy winds,
Yeah.
and there's such a massive chance of firing. I really think like this idea of when properties change hands,
Mhm.
that they should be brought up to fire code and that should be tacked onto the mortgage or something. That's so smart.
I know. I
Yeah.
think so too because um, there already is, it's called a home hardening disclosure form that went into place in 2021. And what that is when a seller sells in any home in California, the first section says, "Do you live in a fire hazard zone?" And
Just yes to everything.
I know. Well, now it is especially. So the seller has to check, yes, I do or no, I don't. If the answer is yes, they go on to section 2. And it says, as the seller, I am aware or I am not aware that the following things have been done to my house to make it more fire safe. When that came out, I thought, this is great. This is going to help so much. And, fire and ember resistant vents were on there, defensible space, roofing, windows, like all the key things are still on that form. And then I wasn't really hearing much about it. And I'm like, I was started asking around, like, what's going on? And then I realized the key language in that kind of gets around it is if they say, yes, I live in a fire zone, they can say, I'm not aware of these things because I'm just not aware.
Mhm.
They can just say, I'm not aware because I don't know anything about these things, and that legally protects them. But really, what should happen is some kind of a home inspection. I think they require it for the defensible space portion, which is brush, but I don't think it's required for the home hardening part, which is the windows, the vents, the roof, the siding, things like that. And so I feel like an inspection for that part should also be required so that now the seller is aware
Mhm.
and the buyer is aware. And, but we've been in such a seller's market that, eh,
It's kinda got lost in the shuffle.
yeah,
But I mean, like, but you think about it, like when a home changes hands, there's so many. I mean, in this town, millions of dollars going back and forth,
yeah,
mortgages, cash, whatever. Like,
it's the best time.
it's the best time, and what's it
The
going to
absolute
cost?
best time.
And it's only going to cost like $150 or something for an expert to come out and be like, you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have that. But
Well,
then people
and
hate that though when they're being told what to do. But after the like the Pacific Palisades is still burning,
every buyer should demand it
right?
or hire their own. It should be part of one of the inspections they conduct. Like, every buyer has a regular home inspection that looks for termites and things like that.
Mold.
Exactly. This should be one of those things because not only do they need to know for their own knowledge, but they need to know because it's going to determine their insurance coverage.
Mhm.
if they're buying a home that has none of these things in place, they may get that insurance for the first year, and then the next year, that because of all this stuff that's happened, especially, they're gonna be cracking down even more so
Mhm.
on requirements for homeowners to make their homes fire safe as a condition of insurance. And so it's really important for a buyer to know this at that point because, again, it's hard because 'cause we're in a seller's market. So I don't know if the buyer can even say, "Oh, but you need to sell or put vents on this or I'm not gonna buy the house."
Mhm.
The power is still with the seller. So but at least the buyer is aware
Mhm.
that, "Hey, I need to do this because pretty soon I'm gonna get a letter from my insurance company saying you have to put vents in."
Yeah, I mean,
And
this might sound like a communist idea, and I know the United States of America isn't so warm to these ideas, but these communities are communities. So when one house doesn't have your vents or other kind of fire protective equipment in it,
mhm,
that home's gonna catch fire, and then another home's gonna catch fire, and then that's how you get the fire going from the Pacific Palisades all the way down to Malibu or all the way into Santa Monica or into
mhm.
Brentwood. Like,
Yep,
that's how it spreads, right? Like,
absolutely,
one weak link in the chain, and the
absolutely.
whole thing goes.
100%.
Yeah,
I mean, that is an exact topic that people talk about in the industry.
yeah.
'Cause, in some of the things that I go to and committees I'm on, there's a program called, Wildfire Prepared Home, and it's sponsored by insurance companies, and if you can get this certificate, it's called a Wildfire Prepared Home certificate, and that's great. Everyone should get their certificate, because insurance companies do recognize that certificate. But now they're gonna be coming out with something called Wildfire Prepared Community because they're realizing, like you said,
Mhm.
the whole community needs to do with that. And nothing was more obvious of that than the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire and even the Camp Fire up in Paradise in Northern California. I mean, when you're losing a whole community, imagine if they all had the same stuff. You wouldn't have windows blown out and, things like that happening.
And there's always gonna be that one guy, that one man or woman standing on their property being like, "I don't want the government telling me what to do." But actually, in this case, it really does make sense because an entire community could be lost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
because this shit doesn't it takes no prisoners. Like, it's just if you don't have your
And if you don't
house.
have it, if you're vulnerable, if you have a fuel bed anywhere in your house, and these embers are gonna find it.
Yeah.
There's just too many of them. They're gonna catch everything. I look at the destroyed photos that are on the LA County, they have so many photos of every parcel. So you can look in by address and you can just click on if it has a red house on it, it's burned. If it has a black house, it's been saved. Or if it has a greenhouse, it just has some damage, and sometimes I'll click in and look, and the ones that have just, like, some damage, it's like the doormat. People don't think about something as simple as their doormat being an ember source,
Mhm.
and that whole 0 to 5-foot zone, anything within 0 to 5 feet should be completely cleared away from your house.
You're right.
That's one of the most dangerous zones that exists.
One of my firefighter buddies told me, like, that's a big issue. They go around to all these communities and there's so much brush up against the house and all this kind of stuff. And that's the stuff that the embers catch.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get people to clean their brush and clean their gardens and clean all this. And no one listens to them. But they don't
They
have
don't.
the,
It's hard.
they don't have the authority to find people or force them to do it. So they just walk around telling people, hey, this is a fire
This is what
hazard.
you should do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then nothing gets done.
But I think and I haven't looked into it, fully, but, love or hate Newsom, he did just sign the Zone 0 thing, home hardening thing. Was that a week ago, 2 weeks ago? And somehow it's mandated now. So I don't know if there's gonna be fines if people don't do it now, but, I mean, I think people have, like, a year to comply or something.
Okay.
So that's something to look for.
That'll be interesting. I think
Yeah,
it's going to be.
I get it. People don't wanna pull up their beautiful rose bushes and their beautiful landscaping but it's especially when you look at the dead debris that is underneath those bushes. If you pull that away and you see how much dead there is under there, that's what they're catching.
And that's the stuff that goes up first and goes up
Yep,
fast.
really fast.
Mm.
And then it goes up and into your
Into your
vents.
vents.
Pretty much.
If they don't have your vents.
Future vents.
Well, look, this has been amazing, educational, and your journey into this space has been incredible. I bet you didn't think you'd be trying to save people's homes from fires when you were a young woman in Ohio going to school.
Playing in the cornfields.
It's a hell of a journey. It's very exciting.
I love it. I literally love it. I mean, even the hard stuff, it was hard at the time, but looking back, it's like I like made it through that. I made it through that hard time,
It's the
you
best.
know?
It's the best kind of work because you're an industry expert and you make a product and it helps people.
Yeah. I mean, and all of our employees are the same way. They all love what they do because we're helping people every day. We call people and we're helping them. We call people and we're helping them. And it really feels good.
Mm.
I mean, I can't imagine, to your point, like, how's it been at the new place? Can't imagine doing anything else. I'm very happy. So,
An amazing journey, an amazing story, and I wish your company and the best of luck, and I hope we don't see wildfires that are that devastating ever again because of
I
technologies
want
like
you.
yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, look, hey, we can go up here and show people we're in the same room if you check out this. So, thank you so much for swinging by,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
and I wish you the best of luck. And I'll put a link on the website, on the podcast, and everything, linking people to your company and stuff like that. And
Awesome.
hopefully, people start protecting their homes and
I hope
they're
so too.
a little
First
bit better.
step is knowledge, education, knowledge, so at least people are aware.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And then even if they can do one simple thing at a time
Yeah.
to start somewhere.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
Thanks for swinging by.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we're done.